Hey guys, welcome back. Jesse is not here today. I will be riding solo on this one. He's actually at work being an actual real life chef in a real life restaurant. So today you just get me, and I have a lot of tomatoes that I got from my garden. It is heirloom tomato season. I love it. So the end of summer, all the tomatoes are starting to get ripe and I have a lot of them. I'm gonna can most of them, but I wanted to show you 3 ways how I use up my tomatoes. And they're easy. First, I'm gonna be using these purplish green tomatoes and I'm going to be making bruschetta with them. So what I'm gonna do is cut these guys up into quarters and then I'm gonna stick them in the oven at 375 for about 10 to 15 minutes or until you think they look beautiful. They're kind of easy to tell when they're roasted to a good amount. So normally bruschetta calls for not roasted tomatoes, but I just like to roast them a little bit, just a tad. So right now I'm going to be cutting these tomatoes into quarters. And growing tomatoes in a garden is not that hard. I do it every year and they turn out great. Some of them don't turn out so hot, but the majority of them always turn out, and it's always worth a try. So you're gonna take your pan, I line it with tin foil, and I'm gonna drizzle some olive oil all over it. So you're gonna wanna stick all the tomatoes skin side down. They just roast better that way. And look at how beautiful they are. Now what you're gonna wanna do is sprinkle salt and pepper all over your tomatoes. Just like a pinch, just sprinkle it. And with the bruschetta, I like to get a French baguette, and they sell mini ones at the bakery by my house. And these are perfect for like 1 serving, or you and your boo, you know. And for this one, I like to cut it on a diagonal so the slices are a little bit longer. I need a new bread knife. As your tomatoes are cooking, you can set up the other ingredients in the bowl. So right now I'm going to use my microblader and I'm gonna microblade 1 small clove of garlic because we're just making enough bruschetta for myself. But if you're making it for 2 people, double it. If you're making it for 4 people, quadruple it. You know what I mean? So I'm just making it for myself, so all I want is 1 clove. I do like a lot of garlic. If you don't like as much garlic, don't use as much garlic. And if you don't have a microblader, you could always just chop it up as fine as possible with a knife. So now I'm just going to cut up my basil and stick it in here. So I got my 1 clove of garlic. I'm gonna do a small bit of basil and throw my tomatoes in there. So I stick all the small basil leaves inside the biggest basil leaf. And these are really tiny basil leaves that I have grown myself. You want to kind of roll it up like a cigar. And it makes the perfect little strips of basil. Tomatoes are out of the oven, and right now we're gonna move on to grilling our baguette. So I have a cast iron flat top here. If you don't have one, that's okay. You could always put it in the oven at about 325 for about 5 minutes to grill it. But I'm gonna use this. So the cast iron, if you have cast iron, you already know that you olive oil it up, or you oil it up in some way. So I'm just gonna throw the bread right on there without putting any olive oil on it. If you are doing it in the oven, I would suggest that you oil your bread up before you stick it in the oven, just to get it a nice little crisp on there. Once the bread is done grilling, but it's still warm, you're gonna wanna cut a piece of garlic in half and just rub the garlic all over the pieces of bread so they get a garlicky flavor to them. Now you're gonna wanna add your basil to the tomatoes. It smells so good. A nice drizzle of olive oil, and make sure you get good olive oil. And then you're also going to want aged balsamic vinegar. And just drizzle it in there. I kind of like a lot. And then you're going to want to stir it all up to incorporate it. It smells so good. And then you could just start plating it on there. And I swear this will impress people, you guys. Trust me. This is so good. All right, for our next tomato dish, you're gonna need a tomato, oregano, jalapeno, cilantro, salt, pepper, and an onion. And today we are making pico de gallo. Here's why I love pico de gallo. If you need salsa for a dish, but don't have the time to make salsa, pico de gallo literally takes 5 minutes, and it's just as good. You could eat it on a tortilla chip, on a burrito, on a taco, whatever you like. But I'm gonna show you how to make it today. First thing I'm gonna do is cut up this onion. I almost forgot, you also need a lime. Don't forget the lime. The lime is very important. Okay, so this is the consistency of the onion you want. Diced up. Next, we're gonna dice up this beautiful tomato. So what you're gonna wanna do with this is try to get only the skin and not the center of the tomato, because it's just gonna water your pico de gallo down. But this tomato is an heirloom tomato, so it's very strange on the inside. If you can't tell, it looks a little janky compared to a normal grocery store everyday tomato. And I'm gonna save the rest of this inside here for my next dish. Tomatoes, all diced up, just as fine as the onion. We're gonna add the tomato to the onion. Now comes the jalapeno, also from my garden. Also pretty easy to grow, just needs like a shit ton of sun. We only need half of it. And if you don't want it too spicy, you're gonna wanna take out all of this white pith in the middle, because that's where the capsaicin is, AKA spice. I like spice. I'm going to leave it in today. Jalapenos diced up, a little bit finer than the tomato and the onion. Now I have the cilantro. I individually pull all the leaves off the stems. You don't have to do that, but I'm weird like that. And what you're gonna wanna do with the cilantro is try to bunch it up as close as possible and just, you know, kind of chop it. Cilantro's all chopped up here. I'm gonna add that to the mix and we are almost done. Now comes the lime juice. So I cut the lime in half and I have a juicer here. If you don't have a juicer, don't worry. Just squeeze as much of this lime as you can into it. Now I'm going to add a pinch of oregano, a couple grinds of pepper, and about 2 to 3 pinches of salt to taste. And then we're just gonna stir this bad boy up and enjoy. Look at this. It looks so good. Let's see how it tastes. Simple ingredients, fresh, garden grown mostly. It's so simple and easy, and it's so good. For our last tomato product, we are going to be making a simple marinara sauce using garden fresh tomatoes. And let me tell you something, no matter how expensive a can of tomato is and where it comes from, when you get a tomato from your very own garden and you eat it, you could taste the difference. It is so good. And if you don't have the room to grow your own tomatoes, if you live in an apartment or something, go to a farmer's market, because I guarantee you it's worth the money. Garden fresh, so good, not canned, makes a difference. First thing I'm gonna do is chop up 3 cloves of garlic. And then for this recipe, you don't have to chop it. We could just slice it real thin. Next, we're gonna chop up an onion, but we already chopped it up from our pico de gallo. And we're just gonna toss that and the garlic into a pan. And for this recipe, we're gonna start it on medium heat because we don't wanna burn that garlic. Whatever you do, do not burn the garlic. And we're gonna get a good amount of olive oil in here, about 2 tablespoons. Make sure you coat all of this. And I don't mind starting it with a cold pan and letting it heat up with the vegetables already in it. So as those onions and garlic are sweating in the pan, I'm going to chop up this leftover tomato, and then I'm going to add a couple other tomatoes and roughly chop them. They don't have to be a perfect because they're going to mush up in the pan with the heat. And then here's our beautiful rough chopped tomatoes we're going to throw into the pan. So you're going to want to wait until the garlic and onions are translucent. I can't even talk. Translucent and sweated down enough. And these look good. So we got all the tomatoes in the pot, and we're going to turn the heat back up to medium. And we're just going to get them all swirled around so they get a little olive oil coating. And we're going to add 2 pinches of salt to it. And you're going to want to add the salt because it tastes good, but also because the salt helps break down the tomatoes and makes them more mushy. Also for this recipe, I like to add a good bit of pepper and pepper flakes. So you don't have to add the pepper flakes if you don't want, but I do like a little spice. I just think it gives it a nice flavor. I'm going to stir it around, and then we're going to cover this up and let it simmer until the tomatoes are nice and mushy and almost like just a sauce. Until they turn into a sauce. So after the tomatoes have been cooking, I want to say for about 20 minutes, I'm going to take the lid off because all the tomatoes sweated out all their water, and I kind of want the sauce to be a little bit thicker. So we're just going to let some of that water evaporate. But it's on a low heat. Then when the sauce is almost done, I'm going to add a couple leaves of basil, also roughly chopped. Doesn't this just look beautiful? The red and yellow tomatoes and the green basil in there. It's going to be so good. Okay, so now we're going to lightly strain the pasta and pour it in here. And we're going to let this cook in here for a little bit. And the reason you want some of the pasta water to get into the sauce is that starch that's in the pasta water is going to make the pasta taste a lot better if there's some in here. So we're going to let this cook in this pot for a little while, just so that the sauce actually sticks to the noodles. You know what I just realized? All of these recipes today are vegan. This pasta is so good. Thanks guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and please, if you stay till the end of the video, let me know what your favorite tomato dish is and how many of you actually grow your tomatoes in your own garden. Thanks. Bye, see you next time. Baby Jessie will be with me.